The 9-year-old girl stood frozen on the edge of the abandoned parking lot, her backpack ripped open, the circling bikers roaring closer with taunting engines and flashing metal. But before panic could swallow her, her police-trained dog, Teton, a massive black and tan German shepherd with sharp, intelligent eyes, lunged forward with a low growl, sensing her fear before she even moved. His muscles tightened, his stance sharpened, and he waited for a single signal, the one she hoped she'd never need to use. With the bikers blocking every escape and the sky darkening above them, she lifted her trembling hand. What would happen the moment Titan received the command? From the moment 9-year-old Emily Hayes first met Titan, the massive black and tan German shepherd her father brought home from the police K9 unit, her world shifted from lonely silence to a life filled with purpose, laughter, and safety she never knew she needed. Emily was a quiet child, small, gentle-eyed, with chestnut hair that curled at the ends and a timidness that made her an easy target for kids who sensed softness as weakness. She didn't talk much at school, kept her head down during recess, and sat alone on the swings after class, pretending it didn't hurt when groups of older kids whispered behind her back. Titan, however, seemed to understand every emotion she carried, watching her with intelligent amber eyes full of patience and unspoken loyalty. He followed her everywhere, through the house, into the backyard, down the hall when she woke shaking from nightmares. And even though he was a highly trained police dog, he seemed to sense his most important mission was simply being her companion. Their daily life unfolded with gentle routine. Early morning walks where Emily giggled as Titan chased butterflies, late afternoons spent reading with her head resting on his warm fur, evenings when he lay curled at her feet while her father polished his service gear. Titan's training was evident in every move he made, executing commands with crisp precision, watching doors and windows with quiet vigilance, positioning himself between Emily and any unknown sound. But beneath his discipline was a deep, almost intuitive tenderness for the little girl who fed him treats with tiny fingers and trusted him more than anyone else in the world. Yet as the weeks passed, something began to shift in Titan's behavior. On their walks home from school, he grew unusually alert, ears pricked, body tense, pulling her closer whenever the distant rumble of motorcycle engines drifted across the neighborhood. Emily noticed men on bikes cruising slowly down streets they didn't live on, glaring at houses like they were scouting them. Her father mentioned nothing publicly, but she overheard him on a late-night phone call whispering about a biker group causing problems and kids being harassed. Just before Titan padded into her room and nudged her protectively toward the center of her bed. Even at school, Emily felt eyes on her during recess, not from kids this time, but from a trio of teenagers leaning against the fence with roaring bikes, smirking as they watched her walk past. Titan reacted every time they appeared, barking fiercely from the other side of the yard, pacing until she returned safely inside. Still, Emily tried to believe it was all coincidence, that she was simply imagining danger because Titan seemed so on edge. But the little signs kept building, Titan refusing to sleep unless her bedroom door was open, the way he positioned himself between her and every shadow during their walks, the strange feeling that something, or someone, was watching them. One afternoon, as she waited outside the school gate for her dad, Titan suddenly growled so deeply it vibrated through her chest, his body lowering into a protective posture she had never seen outside of police demonstrations. When Emily looked up, she saw it, 3 bikers on the far corner of the road, staring directly at her, their engines idling like a warning. Her father arrived seconds later, and as he ushered her into the car, Titan refused to stop glaring through the back window until the bikers disappeared. That night, unable to sleep, Emily practiced the emergency hand signal her father taught her, one meant to activate Titan's highest-level protective training, hoping she'd never need it. But Titan watched her carefully, knowingly, as if preparing himself for a moment he sensed was coming. And as the days slipped by with the bikers appearing closer, louder, more fearless, the quiet fabric of Emily's routine began to tighten into a fragile thread stretched thin between childhood innocence and a threat she didn't fully understand, while Titan, her silent guardian, grew more certain with every instinct he had that danger was circling toward her, like a storm preparing to break. Over the next several days, the air around Emily tightened with an invisible tension that even she couldn't fully explain. But Titan felt it like electricity sparking under his skin, pushing him into a level of vigilance that transformed every sound, scent, and shadow into something he needed to evaluate and guard against. The first real sign that something was wrong happened on a cloudy afternoon as Emily walked home with Titan at her side, the wind brushing fallen leaves across the sidewalk in swirling rust-colored waves. At first everything was quiet, almost too quiet until Titan suddenly froze mid-step, muscles locking, amber eyes narrowing toward the tree line. A faint metallic growl, like engines revving slowly, rolled in the distance, and Titan's response was immediate. He shifted in front of Emily, blocking her with his large frame, ears locked forward, tail rigid, body low and ready. Emily couldn't see anything beyond the trees, but the uneasy twist in her stomach grew when the engine sound stopped abruptly, swallowed by the thick silence of the neighborhood. Titan refused to move for a full minute, scanning every direction before reluctantly guiding her home. Stepping so tightly against her leg it felt like he was trying to shield her from the world itself. That night, he wouldn't leave her doorway, not even to eat, standing stiff and alert while Emily slept restlessly. By morning, the threat she sensed became unmistakable. As Emily approached the school entrance, a blur of movement caught Titan's attention. A biker flipping his helmet visor up just long enough to make eye contact with her before smirking and speeding away. Titan let out a low, primal rumble that turned several heads, but only Emily understood its meaning. This was a warning, a message, a line being crossed. The bikers returned again 2 days later, idling near the playground fence long enough to make the teachers uneasy, their heavy jackets marked with patches she couldn't decipher but instinctively feared. Titan, who had been lying calmly at her father's feet during pickup, leaped into a full protective stance the moment he saw them. Barking so ferociously the bikers backed off, revving their engines as if mocking him. Emily felt her pulse hammering as Titan refused to calm until they were long gone. Things escalated even further when Emily stayed after school for an art project and walked home with Titan just before sunset. The fading light cast long shadows across the pavement, stretching like dark fingers reaching toward her, and the once familiar streets felt altered, charged with a strange heaviness she couldn't explain. Halfway home, Titan stopped again. So suddenly Emily nearly tripped over him, and stared at an alleyway with fur raised along his spine. There was nothing there, at least nothing Emily could see, but Titan kept growling under his breath, inching forward and sniffing the air as if he recognized a scent he had been expecting. A second later, a muffled thud echoed from the alley, followed by the faint scrape of boots on pavement. Emily's breath caught, fear crawling up her throat, but Titan pushed her backward and stood like a wall between her and the alley entrance. She whispered his name, but Titan didn't move until the footsteps faded and the alley returned to silence. The entire walk home, Titan's body was tensed like a coiled spring, his gaze flicking to every house corner, parked car, an open gate as though danger could leap out at any moment. Even inside the house, he paced the windows, nose pressed to the glass, tail rigid. Emily felt her chest tightening. Titan was never like this unless something was truly wrong. Her father noticed too. He double-checked the locks, closed the curtains, and walked through the house with the tense focus of a man who had seen enough danger in his career to recognize the signs. Emily overheard him on the phone again late that night, this time his voice sharper, more urgent, as he mentioned biker group getting bolder, kids being targeted, and revenge threats against the department. She didn't understand much of it, but Titan did. He walked back into her room, planted himself beside her bed, and stayed awake the entire night, ears flicking at every sound outside. By the next morning, Emily felt the storm building around them even before she left the driveway. Titan refused to let her go more than a foot away, constantly circling her like he was mapping danger from every angle. On their way home after school, things finally snapped. Emily reached the large empty parking lot she had to cross, the one that always made her walk faster, and Titan became restless, almost frantic. His breaths grew shallow, muscles tightening, ears locked on something only he could detect. Emily looked around nervously, seeing nothing but cracked pavement and swaying weeds. But then a sound rose from behind the abandoned warehouse at the lot's edge, a slow, menacing rev of motorcycle engines, as if the machines were deliberately being teased awake. Titan's growl deepened, vibrating through Emily's legs, and she instinctively gripped his fur. Then the first biker appeared, rolling out from behind the building with a lazy arrogance. Then another, and another, 3 of them. Then 4. The engines roared louder, echoing through the empty lot like thunder trapped in metal cages. Emily's heart pounded so violently she thought she might collapse, but Titan stepped forward, shielding her with his entire body. barking with the kind of force meant to strike fear, not warn. The bikers slowed, circling like predators testing a boundary, their helmets reflecting the dying orange sunlight in sharp, cold flashes. Emily stumbled backward, gripping her backpack straps as Titan snarled at the tightening circle around them. She couldn't run, not with them blocking every direction. She couldn't scream, not with fear choking her voice. All she remembered was her father's voice in her ear the night he taught her the emergency signal. Use it only when you truly have no other choice. And now, as the bikers inched closer, engines rumbling like beasts preparing to strike, Titan's stance grew fierce, focused, ready to launch into the only role he was trained for when a child he loved was in danger. Emily's hand trembled as she raised it, forming the signal she prayed she'd never need, and Titan's eyes locked onto her with sharp understanding. The bikers sped up, closing in fast. The world seemed to hold its breath. Emily's heart pounded. Titan crouched, muscles tightening like loaded steel. And then, right as she completed the signal, the nearest biker reached out toward her arm, the roar of engines drowning everything as the moment of impact approached. Ava felt the world tilt as the bullies formed a tightening ring around her, their shadows stretching long and jagged beneath the flickering street lamp. And though her voice trembled when she whispered Atlas's name, her police-trained German shepherd was already sprinting toward her from the edge of the park, reading her fear long before she ever called for him, because Atlas had been sensing something wrong all day, growling at empty hallways, blocking the doorway whenever she stepped outside, refusing to leave her side even when she pushed him gently away with a laugh she didn't fully feel. And now everything exploded at once as the biggest boy lunged forward and grabbed her wrist, yanking her back so violently she nearly fell, her breath punching out of her lungs as she tried to pull free. But then the boy's expression twisted, not with triumph but with sudden fear, because Atlas burst into the clearing like a living thunderbolt, fur bristled, chest low, issuing a snarl so deep and guttural that every kid stumbled backward, hands up, as if the night itself had turned against them. But the real danger wasn't them at all. This was the twist Atlas had sensed, because in the split second after the boys scattered, Iva turned and froze. A masked teenager, older and meaner than any of the kids who had cornered her, stepped out from behind the abandoned maintenance shed gripping a cracked wooden bat, the kind that had left splinters in fence posts around the neighborhood for months, the same mysterious attacker who had been vandalizing yards, smashing cameras, and scaring younger kids, and tonight he had followed the bullies here, waiting for the perfect moment when chaos would hide his real target, Ava herself, because she was the one who had accidentally filmed him during one of his nighttime break-ins, not realizing her doorbell camera had recorded his face, and now he hissed, "You shouldn't have kept that video," raising the bat high, the intention unmistakable. Ava's legs wouldn't move, every part of her locked with terror as the boy stepped forward. But Atlas did not hesitate, not for a heartbeat, and he launched himself between them, slamming into the attacker with such force that the bat flew from his hands and clattered across the pavement. The masked teen hitting the ground hard as Atlas pinned him, barking with the thunderous authority of every police dog who ever faced down danger. The attacker fought viciously, trying to roll away, but Atlas stayed locked on, not biting, not harming, just holding, controlling, protecting. Exactly as he'd been trained, and Ava finally snapped out of her paralysis and scrambled backward, tears blurring her vision as she watched her dog fight for her life as though it were his own. The bullies, pale and shaking, didn't flee as she expected. Instead, in the twist she never saw coming, two of them ran to her side, pulling out their phones, one yelling that he was calling the police, the other shouting at the attacker to stop struggling, their earlier cruelty dissolving under the shock of real danger. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had already called from the park entrance, and the masked teen, hearing them, made one last desperate shove, breaking free just long enough to lunge for the bat again, swinging it toward Ava with wild, reckless force. But Atlas intercepted the blow mid-swing, teeth locking onto the wood, splintering it as he ripped it down and away, placing himself fully between Ava and the attack just as the police car screeched to a stop beside the curb. Officers exploded out of the doors, shouting commands, and the masked teen tried to run, but Atlas lunged just close enough to force him back without touching him, a perfect tactical maneuver that gave the officers the opening they needed. Seconds later, they had the attacker face down and cuffed, the danger collapsing like a wave retreating from shore. Ava sank to her knees, shaking so hard she could barely lift her hands, and Atlas turned immediately toward her, leaving the officers to their work as he pressed his head into her chest, whining softly, his entire body trembling from adrenaline and fear. Not fear of the fight, but fear of losing her. She wrapped her arms around his neck in a desperate, clinging hug, burying her face in his fur as tears spilled down her cheeks in shuddering sobs she'd been holding back for weeks, months, maybe years. The bullies watched awkwardly, stunned, silent, as if realizing in real time that the girl they had cornered was the same girl this heroic, disciplined, fiercely loyal dog would throw himself into danger for without hesitation. An officer approached, kneeling beside Ava with gentle reassurance, telling her she was safe now, that Atlas had saved her life, that the video she captured would finally put an end to the string of nighttime attacks. But Ava barely heard anything over the pounding of her heart and the soft, steady whine of Atlas nudging her cheek as though asking her to breathe. And in that moment, under the spinning red and blue lights, surrounded by fear and shock and the sudden, overwhelming relief of survival, Ava realized something she'd never forget. Atlas didn't just protect her because he was trained to. He protected her because she was his girl, his purpose, his entire world, and no danger, no threat, no human cruelty could ever break the bond between a child who needed to feel safe and a dog who lived to keep her that way. And as she held his face gently in her hands and whispered, "You saved me," Atlas leaned into her touch with the quiet certainty of someone who would do it again 1,000 times. Because love, real love, is the bravest force in the world. The flashing police lights finally faded from the street, leaving behind only the faint echo of distant sirens and the cold shimmer of broken bat splinters scattered across the pavement. The attacker had been taken away, the bullies had been questioned and released to trembling parents, and neighbors had emerged from their homes in timid clusters once the chaos died down. But for Ava, everything remained strangely silent, as if the whole world were holding its breath. She sat on the curb with Atlas pressed firmly against her side, his body warm and solid, the steady rhythm of his breathing grounding her in a reality that still felt unreal. Her small fingers curled into the thick fur around his neck, part relief, part fear of letting go, and each time her breath hitched, Atlas gave a soft whine, nudging her shoulder with the kind of gentleness he usually saved for nightmares. And in a way, this was one. When her mother arrived, running so fast she nearly tripped over the curb, she folded Ava into her arms with a sob that shook both of them. "Oh my baby, oh my God, Ava, are you hurt? Did he touch you? Are you okay?" Her voice broke on every word. Atlas sat beside them like a stone guardian, eyes locked on the street, body on high alert, even as Ava's mother cupped his face and whispered, thank you for bringing her home to me." That night, they didn't go back into the house right away. They stayed outside in the cold, under the dim glow of the porch light, letting the quiet settle around them. The officers had already collected the security footage from Ava's doorbell camera, the piece of evidence that had unknowingly put a target on her back. They reassured her repeatedly that she had done nothing wrong, that recording the vandal wasn't her fault, that her bravery had helped them catch someone dangerous. But the words felt heavy and distant, as if spoken underwater. Only Atlas's closeness felt real. Her mother brought a blanket and wrapped it around both of them, her arms tight around her daughter's shoulders. "We're safe now," she whispered over and over, though Ava suspected the words were as much for herself as for her. Atlas sat with his chest pressed against Ava's knees, refusing to relax until she had finally laid her head against her mother's shoulder and closed her eyes. But that night, even sleep felt sharp. Every time Ava drifted off, she jolted awake again at the memory of the masked teenager stepping from the shadows. The bat, the voice, the ring of bullies, the way her legs had refused to move. Each time, Atlas lifted his head from the foot of her bed, watching her with patient, unblinking devotion until she exhaled and he lay back down. By morning, he had crawled up beside her, something he almost never did without permission, and rested his head directly on her chest. She woke that way, his weight anchoring her, his warmth surrounding her, and for the first time since the attack, she felt something loosen inside her. "You stayed," she whispered sleepily, stroking the top of his head. Atlas closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. School resumed the next day, though Ava could feel a new tension in her stomach as her mother drove her there. She wasn't afraid of the hallways themselves. She was afraid of being seen, of being asked, of reliving every second of what happened. She stood frozen beside the car door until she felt Atlas press against her leg. He wasn't coming in, of course. He was a working dog, not a classroom pet, but he'd come with her as far as the school allowed. She knelt, wrapping her arms around his neck in one tight, wordless hug. "You'll be here when I get back," she whispered. Atlas licked her cheek gently. Her mother squeezed her shoulder. "He'll be waiting all day." Walking through the school gates felt like stepping into cold water. Everything looked the same. Backpacks, sneakers, rush chatter. But it sounded different. Suddenly, kids who had ignored her for years were whispering her name, glancing her way with wide, cautious eyes. Some seemed scared, some seemed guilty. Then the bullies approached. She stiffened instantly, but their faces were not twisted into cruel smirks this time. They were pale, shaken, remorseful in ways she had never imagined they could be. The largest boy, the one who had grabbed her wrist, swallowed hard before speaking. "Ava, we're really sorry," he said quietly, refusing to look directly at her. We didn't know that guy was following us. We didn't know you were in danger for real." One of the younger boys nodded quickly. Atlas was like amazing. "We didn't know he could do all that." Ava's breath trembled. She wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet, maybe not for a long time. But something inside her softened at the honesty in their voices. "You could have gotten us all hurt," she said, her voice thin but steady. The big boy lowered his head. "Yeah, we know." He hesitated. "We told the police everything. The truth. Everything we did wrong too." She didn't answer. She simply stepped past them. But for the first time, they didn't block her path. That afternoon, when she burst through the front door and saw Atlas waiting in the living room, ears perked, tail thumping gently against the rug, everything inside her finally cracked open. She ran to him, collapsing to her knees as he pushed his snout into her hands, licking her face as though trying to erase every fear she had carried. "It was so scary," she whispered into his fur. "I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if he was going to hurt me. I didn't know if I'd ever see you again." Atlas whined, a soft, trembling sound that said more than words could. She held him for a long time. In the days that followed, things slowly changed. Ava's mother arranged therapy sessions for her, not because she was broken, but because healing deserved a guide. And Atlas came with her each time, lying beside her feet, offering something no human could: presence, without pressure. He became part of the process, helping her breathe through panic, nudging her gently when memories became too sharp, grounding her when the world tilted. Her therapist explained something that stuck with her. "Your fear isn't a weakness. It's a sign that you survived something real and dangerous. And you didn't survive alone." One night, weeks later, her mother noticed Ava standing by the back door with Atlas. "Are you ready?" she asked softly. Ava nodded. Together they stepped outside into the yard. It was the first time Ava had been out after dark since the attack. Atlas stayed close, so close her hand brushed his fur with every step. But he didn't lead this time. He matched her pace. He let her be brave on her own. She walked to the fence, touched the rough wooden slats, and let the cool night wind brush her face. And when she inhaled, she didn't feel fear. She felt strength. She felt Atlas. That weekend, the police department invited Ava and Atlas to a small recognition ceremony, a private one, not public or overwhelming. Officers knelt to pet Atlas, praising his discipline and tactical precision. One officer handed Ava a certificate with her name and Atlas's printed side by side. "You acted bravely too," he said. "You kept your head up. You called him when you needed him. That's teamwork." Ava smiled faintly. She didn't feel like a hero, but she felt seen. Later that night, she sat with Atlas on the porch steps, the certificate resting between them. The sky glowed deep purple, dotted with stars. She leaned her head against him. "Do you know what you are?" she whispered. Atlas tilted his head. "You're my safe place." Atlas nudged her shoulder, then rested his head in her lap with a long, contented sigh. The world felt big and frightening again sometimes, but in moments like this, Ava understood something crystal clear. Fear didn't mean she was weak. It meant she had something worth protecting. And she had a protector who would walk through fire for her, not because he was trained to, but because he loved her. And she loved him back with everything she had. She folded her hands into his fur and whispered into the night, "You saved me, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be as brave as you." In the soft glow of the porch light, Atlas closed his eyes and leaned into her, and together they breathed in the quiet night. A girl and her dog, bound by courage, healing, and a love that had already proven stronger than fear.